If I rewind the clock to about a year ago when I was exploring putting AI into my daily workloads for the first time, I think back to kind of the first project that I had set up, and it was actually centered around the podcast here, where what I wanted to do was just help with brainstorming some ideas of some topics and some questions that I could ask. Not that it would use AI to create content for me or build the podcast, but more of what are some good questions that I could seek to engage with this type of a person? And it involved a lot of copy and pasting over someone's LinkedIn profile, copying and pasting over things related to their company, copying and pasting over information and notes I had from different conversations that I had with the person who was going to be the guest on the show. And then I would pretty soon be out of the context window of what I could do. And I would say, hey, help me to think of some questions I could use. And the hit rate was okay. I would get a couple of questions. Some of the things were completely unrelated, but it was a helpful tool. And this was actually very useful. It saved a lot of time from starting from scratch on a piece of paper. And that's where we were about a year ago. And things have significantly changed over the past year with how even I have my current workflows set up, and certainly many of you as well. If you think about your daily lives, if you're using AI properly and you're really engaging with it, things have shifted a lot. And we're at a different place now than we were. Context is able to be a lot more broad. And what we can use AI for is less of, hey, help me with this one task, but something that can be more proactively thinking and helping you and getting you the right things that you need at the right time. And this is exactly what our conversation is about today on this episode. Welcome everyone to the PreSales podcast. I'm General Manager Jack Cochran, and I am interviewing Manisha Raisinghani, who is the CEO and founder of SiftHub. I had Manisha on the show actually exactly 1 year ago. And it's interesting looking back and seeing what we're talking about then versus thinking through the conversation I just finished up with her a few minutes ago. It's fascinating thinking about where we're at today. And I think a lot of good practical tips for you to be able to think about what you're doing in your day-to-day life, working as an SC or an SC leader, how you're engaging with your teams and making sure you're able to show up for your customers in the best possible way. That's what we're talking about. A lot of good things in this episode, so I can't wait for you to check it out. As a special note, SoulCon is coming up in August. If you haven't checked it out yet, that is our big conference. It's going to be in Chicago at the end of August. Go to presalescollective.com and click the link for SoulCon to get your tickets today before the price goes up. And I hope to see you there. But without further ado, let me get you right to the episode, right to the interview with Manisha right after the break. Most pre-sales teams don't struggle with answers. They struggle with finding them fast. Now, you know the drill. The RFP lands, the security questionnaire drops, and suddenly you're digging through drive folders, old Slack threads, and pinging the one SC who just knows while the deal keeps moving without you. And here's the thing. Your best answers already exist. They're just buried across too many tools and too many people. SiftHub brings it all together. Your docs, your past RFPs, Confluence, Slack, and gives your team verified deal-ready answers in minutes. Autofill a questionnaire, pull a battle card before a call, get a first draft done while you focus on the work that actually needs you. Teams on SiftHub are completing RFPs 8 times faster. Now, this isn't about replacing the SC. It's about giving you back the part of the job you're actually great at. SiftHub, your answers already exist there. Now they're ready when you are. Manisha, welcome to the PreSales podcast. Happy to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Jack. Again, a big fan of PreSales community, and it's so great to see that this community is growing month on month and year on year like crazy. So glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of year on year, when we were just chatting about this beforehand, it's been almost exactly a year since we had you on the show. And I was trying to think back in preparation of everything that's changed at all, like within pre-sales, specifically, I know within AI, because that was a big topic last time as well. And last year, you specifically talked about AI specifically helping SEs to answer repetitive questions, fill RFPs faster, et cetera. If you had to describe how the AI and SC workflow has changed since then, what's kind of that main headline shift that you would point to?
I think it has been a crazy year, crazy 1 year. We are seeing, I think, 10 years of normal development in 1 year, which is like really hard to even grasp. I think a year ago, we were talking about AI as a co-pilot. It would sit next to the SE and help them go faster, draft an answer, summarize a doc, fill a row in an RFP. The human was still the orchestrator of the deal. They decided what needed to happen in what order for which stakeholder, and the AI just made individual tasks quicker. I think that's the headline shift in this. AI has basically gone from doing tasks to orchestrating workflows now. It's not waiting for the SE to ask a question anymore. It's looking at the deal context, the buyer's industry, the competitive landscape, the stage of the evaluation, and so many other parameters, right? And it is proactively delivering what the SE needs before they even ask for it.
Yeah, I've seen that as well. I'm just thinking about even my own personal utilization. I'm not running any deals anymore like that, but certainly the pre-sales collective and even in my personal life, my utilization went from asking a question of a task that I knew needed to get done, like you were saying, kind of that assistant, to, hey, here's a strategy that we're thinking of. When and how should I start doing this? Or even more, just it knowing my workflow. Like I've got it hooked into my notes application. It's crazy the amount of integration into our daily lives if you have things set up well that can be a very usable tool in that way.
Totally. And see that in SE's life, especially, that changes their job in a fundamental way, I feel. The SE is no longer the person we spoke about last year who knows where every answer lives. They are the person who validates, positions, and tells the story. Their judgment becomes a differentiator now, not their memory or their ability to like really search across 14 different systems. And I think that's a massive upgrade in what the role actually means.
I mean, a relief too. I think for a lot of people, that's a limiting factor. Unless you're a person who excels at being able to do that sort of mental juggling of where everything sits, what the context is, a huge relief. And I think allowing you to be better at your job of being the human in the deal, as opposed to you being the knowledge base of the deal.
Totally.
A lot of it has come to, which is a term that I think I'd like to discuss a little bit with you. Certainly this existed beforehand, the idea of vibe coding, which, just in case someone listening has only maybe heard the term, let's maybe define it a little bit here, is at a very high level, just writing quick scripts or automating workflows without actually being a developer in some way, as much, as a very high level thing. I'm seeing a lot of SEs starting to do this. And yes, it existed before, but it's become so much easier to do now. Are you seeing a lot of this as well with teams that you work with? And is that a part of this kind of solution from your perspective?
By the way, absolutely seeing this. Not just in SEs, my husband, who is a VC, he's become a vibe coder too. We'll keep that story aside for now.
Okay.
But for SEs, the use case which excites me the most is when they use vibe coding to prototype for customers in real time. What I mean by this is, let's say a prospect says on a call, we love your product, but we wish the dashboard showed compliance status by region instead of by, let's say, segment or entity. A year ago, SE would write that down, files a feature request, maybe mock something up in a slide deck, and the prospect waits 2 weeks to see if the vision matches, because obviously when you show something to prospect, it's easier for them to say, this is what, I was looking for. So earlier that was the process. It was a 2-week process. Now the SE takes a screenshot of the current product, drops it into Claude, says, redesign this dashboard to show compliance status group by region with a drill down maybe by entity or segment. And they have a working visual prototype in minutes. Like they can share it on the next call or literally even in the same conversation with the customer. So I think this is basically, fundamentally changing how SEs run technical evaluations. Instead of telling a prospect, imagine this could work differently, the SE can now show them. So I mean, there are a lot of such use cases, but this prototyping, because that's something even we do a lot at SiftHub. Like my salesperson also does this, not just SEs. And this also connects, I'm sure, you would have heard about this conversation. It connects to a bigger conversation which is happening in pre-sales right now. The idea that SE is becoming an FD, forward deployed engineer. All of us know about the Palantir model, where engineers are embedded with customers, building custom solutions on top of the platform. that used to require actual software engineers. Now, SEs with vibe coding skills can do something remarkably close. Though they are just prototyping solutions today, they are not like really building things in production. But honestly, you never know. I mean, that line may blur sooner than anyone expects.
Lines have blurred so much over the past year. I wouldn't be surprised. I don't ever want to say it'll never happen anymore because I feel like something can. But I think you're absolutely right. I think there's been a lot of conversation. I've had a lot of conversations about the rise of the forward deployed engineer, what kind of this shifting model means when we're getting closer to the technology, closer to deployment, or when you as a sales team realize you're no longer being paid on revenue, but by on the customer using the product, which is, I think, a big thought shift for how we have to think about selling. But you're right. It's not that SEs anymore need to be more technical to do this. And I think that's what a lot of SEs who aren't necessarily that technical are afraid of is, oh no, if I'm suddenly going to be asked to go in and build a prototype or actually deploy a proof of concept, that used to require a lot of knowledge that it might not require anymore to get a POC up and running.
Totally. And if you see, Jack, the SEs who are actually leaning into this are winning more deals. Not because they are better engineers or they are better technically, because they have turned the evaluation into a, let's say, collaborative design session instead of one-way demo. They are working more closely with the customer, and now customer sees them as a trusted advisor and not someone who is just doing standard demos for their problems.
Exactly. The number one thing you can do as an SE is get your customer to feel like they're understood. That's going to win you more deals than being technically right with all your features. And what shows someone more that you understand them, which is building something with them to showcase exactly what they need as opposed to assuming it, right? If you're going to be building something and deploying something, you can't be generic about how you do it. You have to know the specifics. And what a better way to do that than, hey, this is what we were talking about, right? How does this work? If not, let's change it. Let's make it work for you.
I've had instances where I've spinned up entire modules using our product screenshots and all the context which we get from SiftHub about a buyer and use that for prototyping. And the SE leaders of like large organizations with having at least 200 SEs working with them, they were like, wow, this is what I meant. I wasn't able to articulate, but thank you for putting my words into a real picture.
Absolutely. I was just talking about this on Friday with someone. We were having a conversation about this, and it came out that it's incredibly difficult for someone who is buying software to be able to state exactly what they want. But it's an SE's job to be thinking about that with your own product within your domain 100% of the time. Like if we think about someone at your organization at SiftHub, they understand your agentic knowledge base, your RFP responses, all the things about your product, how to make that tribal knowledge work within an organization. They're thinking about that all day. If I'm looking to buy something like that, I've thought about it maybe for a half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe a couple hours. I don't have that ability to have spent all my time thinking about it. And so I need you to come in and help get me there, help me to get my thoughts I have and questions I haven't asked out on paper. And so that's still the human value, right, that an SC or a sales team is bringing. And now, like you said, make those words, those thoughts I haven't quite formulated actually come to life. We can do that so much better than we can ever before.
Absolutely. Can't agree more. And I think it's just going to get more powerful with every single day passing.
I want to talk a little bit about SiftHub because I know your positioning has even evolved a little bit within this past year due to shifting AI, which I think is really good. It's evolved towards, if I have this right, democratizing knowledge across sales teams. One, do I have that right? And two, what does that actually mean in practice? What's an AI agent doing today that it couldn't do last year? I mean, I've already talked about it a little bit, but talk to me about that shift at SiftHub.
Every AI agentic company is having to go through a lot of changes when it comes to either product or narrative or selling motion. And we are no different. We are trying to keep up with Claude these days, right? Yesterday it was OpenAI, then it was Gemini, and now it's Claude. You never know, after 1 month, again, OpenAI is going to come back with stronger models than Claude. So currently it's Claude. So when we talk about democratizing knowledge, right, your top performers know what to say and what to send to a prospect to close a deal. Let me give you an example. Your top SE has worked 200 deals. They know that when a healthcare prospect asks about HIPAA compliance, the real question behind the question is about BA terms and audit logging, not just do you support HIPAA. They know that when a financial services buyer sends a 400 question questionnaire, 60% of it maps to SOC 2 Type 2 report. But the remaining 40% requires agency and taste and context and pulling together different teams. That knowledge lives in one person's head. And when that person is on PTO or leaves the company, that knowledge walks out the door, right? I mean, we'll talk more about tribal knowledge later, but RFPs are just one piece. Think about pre meeting prep. You're an SE about to walk into a technical deep dive with a procurement heavy industry, let's say manufacturing company. The agent surfaces that another SE on your team handled a similar objection around on premise deployment requirements 6 weeks ago with a logistics buyer, because logistics and manufacturing both are like procurement heavy segments. And here's exactly how they positioned the hybrid architecture story and what landed well. So, your current SE is not starting from scratch. You're building on what already worked for a similar buyer in a similar conversation at a similar stage. That is something which agents are able to do today, which they couldn't do a year ago, I would say. They carry that institutional context across every deal. It could be for a meeting prep, it could be for an RFP, it could be for a demo narrative. It can be like, even for a post meeting follow up. So you're just finishing a call and you're on back to back calls, right? You don't have all the luxury of time to draft beautiful documents or emails to send to a buyer. So if you need to send a tailored architecture overview, the agent knows that an SE on your team in Europe already created an asset for a similar use case last month. Same integration pattern, same compliance requirements, slightly different region. Instead of building out from scratch, you're adapting something that's already been validated with a customer, with a one deal. And that's the biggest, I would say, proof point you can have. So that's basically a lot of hours saved. And the quality is higher because it's based on something that actually worked in the field.
Right. I mean, that's been the dream for years. I mean, of trying to figure out how do we make sure we're working as a team, or how to make sure we're collaborating on what works and sharing stories in team meetings. And I remember last year, we were just getting to the point where we could use agents to have context of everything within a single deal. That still felt like a stretch a year ago. And now we're at the point of saying, no, it's every deal we've ever done, all the documentation, everything that can all be used now, right? That's a huge, huge shift. If I'm just trying to think about if I, as an SC, was going to walk into a deal and I had the context of every other deal that had happened alongside of me, not humanly possible to do, right? But if I had the ability to have that at my disposal, how much more confident I would be that I could solve this company's problems versus, I'm sure we've handled this before. I'm not sure where, I'm not sure who to ask. I'm not sure where to look, or if the person who worked on that deal is still with the company, if they saved their notes somewhere. It definitely changes things for sure.
And also, before even you ask, right? Like, there are so many times because we are on back to back calls, we miss so many signals when customers are speaking to us. Maybe a customer mentioned a competition. Now, you might have missed it, but just imagine you are getting a ready battle card, a customized battle card for that customer, which you can immediately share it after the meeting. So I think, yeah, today AI, instead of just retrieving an answer, it's actually connecting the dots across your entire opportunity of the company history and proactively brings the right knowledge, the right asset, the right positioning to the right person at the right moment. I think that's the real shift, not retrieval. It's mainly reasoning.
Yeah, which is a definite huge shift, right? And it's something that if you haven't started exploring this and you're listening to this and you're going, wow, it's not like this is all that far-fetched to start exploring these types of ideas. I do want to make a little bit of a pivot here to asking you about something that you've undertaken recently. In November, you had joined the board at Paytm as an independent director, which is, I think, a significant move alongside running SiftHub, right? So two, I think, very important things. What does, for you at least, operating at that level of fintech scale teach you about how enterprise teams are using or misusing the tools in AI that they have at their disposal?
First of all, I think it's an honor to be on the board of a public company of this size. And what it gives you beyond governance responsibilities is a window into how large scale orgs actually operate, and especially in financial services where compliance is really, really critical. The biggest lesson, not just from Paytm, I would say, from talking to multiple public companies with 10,000 plus employees, AI transformation starts at the top. It's not a technology decision, it's a leadership mentality. You have to really empower your teams to experiment, move fast, and make decisions without waiting for 5 layers of approval. And the companies, that are pulling ahead right now, you would have seen, you can clearly see the difference in companies who are like, I would say, leaders and then followers and then laggards. The companies that are pulling ahead right now aren't the ones with the biggest AI budgets, which is counterintuitive. They are the ones where the CEO or CRO is personally pushing teams to adopt AI into their workflows. And instead of delegating to an innovation task force or an AI committee, which people were trying to form last year, because they would report you back in 6 months, and AI cannot wait for 6 months, right? Because at that scale of 10,000 employees, you have hundreds of teams, each with their own processes, their own tribal knowledge, their own way of doing things. You can buy the best software in the world and still have half the organization running their workflows in spreadsheets because nobody invested in the change management. And I've seen this play out in fintech. I've seen it in enterprise SaaS broadly. The tools are there, the adoption is broken. And it's almost always because leadership didn't create the conditions for people to move. So this is more, what I'm seeing in large organizations. But what teaches me as a founder, what this teaches me as a founder is the product that wins isn't the one with the most features. And this is something we have seen a lot in last 1 year, right? I mean, the product which embeds itself into existing workflows so naturally that people adopt it without being forced to. Because generally, 99% of the people still don't know the capability of AI. I mean, we are on top of AI because we are building in this space. We literally know what Claude is doing on every single day or every 12 hours these days. But most people don't know, right? And at SiftHub, this is why we obsess over meeting people where they work for adoption. If your SE lives in Slack, SiftHub is in Slack. If they are on a call, the on-call agent surfaces what they need in real time. And soon SiftHub will be available in cloud, by the way, and that's becoming the new interface for many revenue teams. So I don't think you can ask enterprise teams to change their behavior to use your tool. You have to change your tool to fit their behavior.
I love that. No matter what tool you're selling, I think that's a good takeaway, right? Which is a shift in how we approach sales fundamentally as well. I think back to even when I was first starting in pre-sales over 10 years ago, a lot of my conversations were about helping a customer understand what they were going to need to change in order to fit what we were deploying with them. That just doesn't work anymore, especially if you're something where you're trying to get people to adopt something that has AI at its core. If I have to do a new process to do it, that's never going to work. How long did we try launching different, document management services and different basically overlays on the Google Drive that would make it easier to get? I mean, I've sat through so many of those and they never got adopted because, well, my process is my process, right? You have to meet people there, just like you said. I think you're right. Absolutely right.
And it's different how 100 people or a 500 people company operates versus how a 5,000 people company operates, right? I mean, we need to understand that.
Absolutely. Something recently you wrote on LinkedIn, you talked about how sales is being the most blamed but least understood function at the same time. Talk to me a bit about that. How does the dynamic play out specifically for SEs who sit at that intersection of sales and engineering?
I've been on both the sides of the table. I was a CTO for 8 years in my previous startup, and now I'm a founding revenue leader as well, right, at SiftHub. And I speak to so many CROs. I mean, I really empathize with CROs and SE leaders. I think, especially in all this, SEs sit in the most awkward spot in any revenue org. They report into either CRO or sales, but they think like engineers. They are like kind of mix of revenue plus engineering. So they are measured on deal outcomes, but they don't control all the aspects of the deal. They build a technical credibility that wins evaluations, but A gets the quota retirement, right? And when a deal slips, the first question is usually, was the technical validation strong enough? Which translates to basically, did the SC do their job? It's a very tricky situation to be in. And it's a function where the value is enormous, but the attribution is not always visible. Nobody notices when the SE nails a 400 question security question in 3 days instead of 3 weeks, right? Nobody celebrates when SE's competitive positioning is the real reason a deal didn't go sideways in a bake-off. But everyone notices when that demo breaks, like A's would keep pinging SEs that, hey, what are you showing? Let's show something else, right? While the screen is being shared, I'm sure, all the SEs have gone through this moment.
Everyone has had that moment for sure.
Exactly. So I think it's a very awkward situation, but here's how AI becomes a proof point for SE value. I think when you have a platform that tracks what SEs are actually doing, how many deals they are supporting, not just quantitatively, but the quality of the content they are producing, the speed of response, the win rates on deals, where they are heavily involved versus lightly involved. Suddenly you have that data. And that data changes conversations with CROs or the CEOs. In fact, one of our customers, Syrian, they saw their percentage of ops advancing to the next deal stage to go from around 65% to 95% after their team started using SwiftHub. That's not an efficiency metric. That's a deal quality metric. Basically, it proves that when SEs aren't buried in, repetitive tasks, they actually have time for strategic thinking, for tailoring the narrative, for understanding what the buyer really needs, because the buyer is so informed these days. They don't just go faster, they win more. And I think that's the kind of data an SE leader can take to their CRO and say, this function is a revenue multiplier, not a cost center. So invest accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. While you were explaining that, I was having so many flashbacks to conversations I was having about the value of SC teams and the value of how do we measure what we do and everything else like that, which is, I feel like a whole separate conversation that we can have. But I 100% agree with that. Final question for you before we kind of get to your final thoughts. Let's say an SC or an SC leader is listening to this episode and they're like, you know what? I feel like I'm behind. I feel like I haven't started. How do I catch up? What's a good first step that someone could take today to get some vibe coding or exploring AI capabilities in their current workflows? Where do you begin if you feel like you're behind?
Wow, that's an interesting one. There are so many thoughts I have. Honestly, I also struggle prioritizing what I want to learn every single day in this new world of AI. What I would suggest, I'll give two actually, one for an SE leader and one for an SE. So for SE leaders, here's what I would do. Have your team track every task they do for just 1 week. At the end, sort them into 3 buckets. Tasks where the SE added real strategic value, and be honest with yourself. Tasks that were repetitive but necessary, and tasks that were just administrative overhead. Most SE leaders have never actually measured how much of their team's week is spent on work that doesn't require human judgment. And once you see that number, you will be shocked. You can't unsee it, right? And also, on top of that, what will surprise you, a lot of the AI assisted work your team is doing today still belongs in that third bucket, which is overhead bucket. Because if your SEs are spending, let's say, 20 minutes before every call copy pasting deal context into Claude, pulling notes from CRM, grabbing the last call transcript, feeding it all in manually just to get a decent output. That's still admin work. So they have replaced one form of overhead, I would say, with another. So this exercise of 3 buckets will help you that if your SE is still the integration layer and prompt engineer, or they're really adding strategic value to win these deals. So this was for SE leaders. Try to do it. Few of the prospects or customers we work with, they did this exercise and it was really eye-opening for them. But if you're an SE, I would go back to vibe coding. Take a screenshot of your product's UI. It is simple, right? Drop it into Claude. Ask it to redesign a screen for a specific prospect's use case. Very, very specific. You are handling 20, 30 deals at least on a weekly basis. Pick one use case, build a custom visual that shows the prospect their real world inside your product. That will literally take you only 15 minutes. And suddenly you will realize you're not doing admin, you're doing strategy, you're shaping how a buyer sees your product in their context. So do this before your next demo, maybe, after a few days, and see how that conversation changes.
That's such an easy thing to start with. Like, just give it a try. What do you have to lose on that? And if you do end up doing that, and it's something that you can share, I'd love to see it as well. Over on our PreSales Collective Slack channel, we have a podcast channel. If you end up doing this, drop your Claude example in there if you can. Blur out the stuff that you have to blur out, obviously, if there's stuff from your product you don't want to show. But would love to see people actually doing this exercise. Manisha, before we go, as we're almost out of time, if anyone wants to get in touch with you to chat more, either to find out about some of the things you talked about here or to find out more about SiftHub, how can someone get a hold of you?
I'm very, very active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and my email address as well. I'm at manisha@sifthub.io. Feel free to reach out to me. Would love to share my learnings in the world of AI and learn a couple of things from you.
Absolutely love it. Anything that you want to leave people with? Could be something we talked about, maybe highlighting something else, or a hot take of sorts. Anything you want to leave people with before we go?
A lot has been spoken about agency and design. Like, these are the only 2 things which will really matter in the world of AI. Think about what agency and design mean in your world, in your SE world, and start either learning that or doubling down on that, because that is the future of any work, not just SE.
Yeah, that's definitely where we're going. I love it. Manisha, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure to chat with you today.
Thanks, Jack. It was great to talk to you as always. And yeah, looking forward to a lot of prototypes in the community.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to the PreSales podcast by PreSales Collective. Did you know that we also post on the PreSales Collective blog following each episode? Head there to read through information on shows you might have missed or find another past episode to listen to. For more information on the PreSales podcast itself and to listen to those past episodes, visit presalescollective.com/podcast.